The spreading threat of terrorism, ballistic missile attacks, global cyber warfare, and deadly acts of piracy in international waters, these radical changes in the new security environment need an adequate response. It is expected to come in mid-November when the 28 NATO heads of state and government gather in Lisbon to approve the alliance's new strategic concept.
The new strategic concept will have to guide the next stage in NATO's evolution.
But looking to the future does not mean the fundamentals of the alliance will be left in the past. The commitment to collective defense, credible military capability, and political consultations will remain a foundation of NATO. This foundation has been in place during the last 61 years with the signing of the Washington Treaty and the adoption of several strategic concepts.
The first stage was obviously the Cold War alliance, purely defensive, big, static armies facing down one clear adversary. You might call that NATO version 1.0. And it worked very well.
During this first stage, NATO adopted 4 strategic concepts. All of these documents were classified. The first was approved in January 1950, less than a year after the signature of the Washington Treaty. The document stated that the primary function of NATO was to deter aggression. NATO forces would only be engaged if this primary function failed and an attack was launched. The invasion of South Korea by North Korea made it clear NATO needed to urgently address 2 fundamental issues: the effectiveness of the alliance's military structure and the strength of NATO forces. That led to the establishment of an integrated military force under centralized command and the nomination of General Dwight Eisenhower as NATO's first Supreme Allied Commander Europe, or SECURE, the creation of the Supreme Headquarters Allied Forces Europe, or SHAPE, and the Supreme Allied Command Atlantic, SACLAND. These structural changes, together with the accession of Greece and Turkey, led to the drafting of NATO's second strategic concept, which was approved in December 1952. This document outlined NATO's overall strategic aim to ensure the defense of the NATO area and to destroy the will and capability of the Soviet Union and her satellites to wage war. The third strategic concept was issued in May 1957, advocating massive retaliation as a key element of NATO's new security posture. As soon as NATO's third strategic concept was adopted, international developments put into question the alliance's strategy of massive retaliation. A new process of reflection was launched, and in January 1968, NATO's fourth strategic concept was issued. There were 2 key features to the new strategy: flexibility and escalation. The deterrent concept of the alliance is based on a flexibility that will prevent the potential aggressor from predicting with confidence NATO's specific response to aggression, and which will lead him to conclude that an unacceptable degree of risk would be involved, regardless of the nature of his attack. The years that followed were marked by a slow process of confidence building between the East and the West. However, mutual distrust still characterized the relations between the 2 blocs, and it was not until the fall of the Berlin Wall, the dissolution of the Warsaw Pact, and the breakup of the Soviet Union that new relations could be developed.
NATO version 2.0 was the post-Cold War NATO, from the fall of the Berlin Wall until today. It has also worked well.
This period was marked by the adoption of 2 strategic concepts that were public documents. The first, of November 1991, maintained the security of its members as its fundamental purpose, but it also sought to improve and expand security for Europe as a whole through partnerships and cooperation with former adversaries. It reduced the use of nuclear weapons to a minimum level sufficient to preserve peace and stability. In 1999, in the year when NATO celebrated its 50th anniversary, Allied leaders at the Washington Summit agreed on a new strategic concept. It described the evolving strategic environment at the turn of the century and assessed foreseeable security challenges and risk. Discussion leading to the adoption of this document was influenced by the alliance's experience of engagement in the Balkans. The 1999 strategic concept provided a broader definition of security than before, adding political, economic, social, and environmental factors to the traditional defense dimension. The document stated that security, consultation, and deterrence in defense were NATO's fundamental security task, adding that crisis management and partnership were essential to enhancing security and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area.
The time has now come for NATO 3.0, an alliance which can defend the 900 million citizens of NATO countries against the threats we face today and will face in the coming decade. The strategic concept is the blueprint for that new NATO.
The new document is expected to focus on 3 areas where NATO needs to change, taking into account its enlarged membership from 19 to 28 allies and world events such as 9/11 and NATO's engagement in Afghanistan. First, the alliance needs to modernize its defense and deterrence capabilities in light of new threats. Second, it needs to update its crisis management through a comprehensive approach where political, civilian, and military efforts work towards common goals. And finally, NATO should develop deeper, wider, and more practical partnerships with countries and organizations around the world.